what's going on in the region. Sir, Trump's foreign policy, of course, with unilateralism, his priority is over traditional diplomacy. How do you assess this shift, and what does it mean for America's long-term global standing?
Well, Rana, in the long term, this is very bad for the United States. Now, I've reported on Donald Trump for almost 37 years. I have a very long history with him as a journalist. And Donald lives in a world he makes up in his own head. If he says something, that makes it true, or as I like to say, Donald creates his own reality. And he doesn't know anything about the Middle East. I mean, this is a man who did not even know why there's a memorial at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii over the ship that was sunk by the Japanese in 1941. He didn't know that. Had to be explained to him. If you were to ask Donald, tell me about the effect of the Nakba, he'd go, what? If you said to him, well, what is the difference between being Sunni or Shia, and how does that affect Middle East politics? He'd have no idea what you were asking about. Donald seriously believes that if he says something, that makes it so, and he has the power to make it so. Why Egypt or Jordan, for example, would accept Palestinians from the Gaza is beyond any reasonable person's understanding. And then underlying this, remember that Donald hates Muslims. He wanted to bar all Muslims from entering the United States 8 years ago. He makes an exception if you're a super wealthy Muslim. Otherwise, he doesn't like you. He doesn't want you in the U.S. And these ideas he has aligned with Benjamin Netanyahu's government. And it's
Professor Johnston, I don't want to interrupt you, but why does he make a difference if whoever is a super wealthy Muslim? Why does he consider?
Because all over his life, Donald has received vast sums of money from people who are very wealthy. Russians, especially Russian gangsters, mobsters, paid premium prices for apartments in his Trump Tower because, unlike other buildings in New York, he didn't care who you were as long as you paid him above market prices. And he said that. He said that repeatedly spoken well of people who put money in his pocket, particularly when they pay prices way above the norm. And he identifies with rich people and dictators.
Perfect, sir. His administration is openly pressuring Latin American countries, forcing policy changes through economic threats. Do you think these strong arm tactics are sustainable, or could they push nations closer to China and Russia, sir?
Oh, I think that China in particular benefits a great deal from this. And shutting down U.S. humanitarian aid, that's 42% of all humanitarian aid in the world, is just a gift to President Xi in China. And unlike Donald Trump, an appallingly ignorant man, President Xi is a very sophisticated, highly educated person. So Russia will get some gains, but their economy is in such bad shape, there's not a lot they can do. But China will be a big winner here. And over time, Netanyahu has been turning Israel into a pariah country, and Donald Trump could do that to the United States if he's not checked.
The Trump administration is also aggressively countering China's presence in global trade. From tariffs to direct interventions in Latin America, could this strategy backfire and accelerate China's influence in the region, sir? But based upon it can.
Absolutely can. Donald assumes that if he says something like, I'm going to put a tariff on your country's goods, that you're just going to roll over and do it. And he also thinks the country pays the tariffs. They don't. American consumers pay these. But Mexico, Canada, China, other countries he is trying to change the order with, they're not going to just roll over and do what he wants. In fact, the provincial premiers, essentially governors of the Canadian provinces, were on Capitol Hill last week, and they literally asked senior members of the U.S. Congress, is Donald Trump going to send the army into Canada to invade it? Because he talks about making it the 51st state. And the US, in the early days of the 19th century, invaded Canada 3 times. So it's not unreasonable for Canadians to fear military action against them by the United States.
Trump, sir, America's, of course, Professor Johnston's, Trump's, America's first doctrine extends to Europe, where tensions are rising over his dismissive approach towards NATO. Could this push European nations towards greater military independence, and what would that mean for transatlantic relations?
Well, NATO was formed in 1945 to create a permanent alliance to prevent future wars after World War II. Trump has now made it very clear, himself, his Secretary of State, and his utterly unqualified Defense Secretary, that they side with the Kremlin and want to force Ukraine to give up a lot of territory and not have any real guarantees of protection. The other NATO countries now have to decide how much they're going to spend to stop the promises repeatedly made by Vladimir Putin that he intends to conquer now independent countries that were once part of the Soviet Empire before the Iron Curtain came down 25 years ago. And Donald, in fact, has not ruled out military attacks on Denmark, a NATO ally, if it doesn't hand over Greenland. So I think Donald is creating a lot of instability. I think he's very much helping the dictators who want to expand their territory, both President Xi, who has large geographic claims, and Vladimir Putin, who's very clear about his intentions for the future.